The Ain't No Fang podcast. From Arizona Sports, Ain't No Fang.
Let's take a vote. I vote that we never play the Dodgers again this season. All in favor? Say aye. Steve Zinsmeister and Alex Weiner for you on the Ain't No Fang podcast. The D-backs, for some reason, just continue to struggle against the Dodgers. And here we are after a 3-game series where nothing seemed to go right for the D-backs. You get 2 starts from your 2 best pitchers, and they were, without a doubt, the worst start of the season for definitely Merrill Kelly and one of the worst of the season for Zach Gallen. What is it about the relationship with the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers that just everything feels like big brother beating up on little brother?
Although you do say all in favor of not playing the Dodgers again, but what if it's in like the NLDS? If like, would you take an NLDS berth if you had to play the Dodgers again?
I guess I would take that.
There you go.
But I guess I just meant for the rest of the regular season.
Well, they don't have to, so
good. There
you go. They get to play them 8 times in the first 10 games, not again until August, and then at 0 points in September, which is weird. And but that's sort of the new world we live in now. There's not a lot of division games left for the Diamondbacks. They get 3 against the Rockies, 2 against the Giants, and then that's it.
Yeah, their schedule the rest of the way is odd. So you finish the year with 3 interleague series against New York, Houston, Chicago White Sox, I think. And not in that order, but those are the last 3 teams that you play in the last 9 games of the season. There's going to be a crazy wild card race here. They do have 7 more games against the Cubs, a team that they're directly competing with. Mm-hmm. You mentioned 2 games against the Giants. But they're very much in this hunt for the 3rd, maybe even bump their way up into a 2nd or 1st wild card spot. But they just don't play a lot of division games the rest of the way. Yeah,
and they don't need to in the races. I mean, they get 7 games against the Cubs. That's going to be the 7 biggest games of the season. Those in the Giants' 2-game series. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack as far as the wild card race is concerned. I think the Phillies have put their stamp on that 1st spot. I think it's, going for the 2nd and 3rd spots. The Cubs are looking pretty good right now. Then you have the Giants and the Diamondbacks and the Reds and the Marlins. So, yeah, that's sort of the landscape. As far as going back to this Dodgers series, I mean, man, we hadn't seen the Diamondbacks get outplayed in a series like that maybe all year. I know they've had like their down stretches in the 0-9 streak, and but man, I mean, they were out of the 2nd and 3rd games of that series pretty quickly. Like they were just out of them. So that's one where you just and Christian Walker said after the 3rd game that he takes each series as they are. It's so important to leave that there, and just like they're 7-31 at Dodger Stadium the last few years. It's just been a black hole for them there. Leave it there. They were playing very well going into that series. They took 3 out of 4 against the Reds, which was a much more important series for their purposes than this Dodgers series. Now they have a really good Orioles club coming into Chase Field starting Friday, going in through Sunday. They got to play. They got to play well. They got to get back to the standard that they were playing at before they went on that road trip.
6-game home stretch, 3 against Baltimore, 3 against Colorado. 2 very different series.
Yeah,
I agree with you that the Baltimore series, while I'm expecting it to be fun and enjoyable baseball, it's also very difficult, and that's what makes it so fun. But then that Colorado series carries a lot of weight for the Diamondbacks because that's a series you got to nab at least 2 wins just to maintain where you're at. You're right about the importance of that Cincinnati series. I mean, that's a team that you were directly competing with for a wild card. 4 games there. You take 3 of the 4. I'll take that any day of the week. It's the same kind of vibe I think that you're going to get in the Chicago series coming up in, a week or 2, where you're going to have 4 straight games against the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley, and that's going to be very difficult. And a lot of those are day games too. It's just a weird series. You're 4 games in Chicago in the middle of the day, not something the Diamondbacks are used to doing.
No, I haven't seen the Cubs this season. Yeah, that's going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be like that could. Like, really, those 7 games could decide the 2nd wildcard spot. I mean, if the Cubs take 5 out of 7 of those things, then they're kind of supplanted in that spot, potentially, unless they contend for the division, which is still open with them and the Brewers. Yeah, going back to that Red Series, I think we recorded before the Red Series started.
Right before, yeah.
Yeah, that was a heck of a battle between 2 young teams. I mean, all 3 games were close, or all 4 games were close. The Diamondbacks, there's a good argument that they should have swept them. They were the better team in that series. It wasn't the cleanest series by all intents and purposes for either team. There were base running mistakes. There were errors. I mean, it looked like the two young guns going at it, and there were going to be mistakes. There were going to be highly leveraged moments in which, someone was going to step up. What was really important in that series was Corbin dominated that series. I mean, there was so many rookies to look at in that series. Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, Spencer Steer, and they all had moments, but Carroll was consistently showing out that entire way.
But I worry that maybe on a national scale, people only saw Corbin Carroll getting thrown out at home plate by Ellie De La Cruz on an attempted inside the park home run.
Yeah, but he's going to win the Rookie of the Year anyway. Yeah. So just for him and for what they need out of him, for him to hit the game-winning home run in the first game, I think he hit 500 in that series. He went 0 for 4 the next game in Los Angeles, but then he hits the home run against Clayton Kershaw. So, it hasn't been like the most consistent month and a half in the world for Corbin Carroll, but he has been much better lately, and that gives them a good chance. The offense in LA really, really struggled. I mean, they looked pretty lifeless after giving up so many home runs in the early goings of a lot of those games. Yeah, that's something that needs to be righted like pretty immediately, because this is an Orioles club that's going to score a lot of runs on you. Similarly young, but the way that they've been playing all year, it's been kind of a step ahead of some of the other young teams that we've been talking about. So that's one where you can't afford to score 2 runs and hope to win a couple of these games.
Something that would have helped a lot for the Diamondbacks is the opportunity to pick up guys on waivers. It's a whole new system than it used to be. It used to be trade waivers. Every team would put their biggest contracts on trade waivers because, just see what you can get after the trade deadline.
Verlander.
Get something you like. Yeah. Verlander goes, that was when he went to Houston.
2017,
there was no repercussions, though. You could just pull them right back. If somebody didn't give you what you wanted, you just, all right, well, I don't have to get rid of that player. Well, now that system is gone, and now the new system, I think, is proving to be a little messed up or in need of some tweaks.
Yeah, there's no rule against a team claiming multiple players. You don't go to the back of the line. And so for the Diamondbacks, you look at some of the guys who are on there, it's like, oh, Ronaldo Lopez, he's had a good year out of the bullpen. He could help their depth there. Matt Moore, left-handed pitcher out of the bullpen. Reverse splits, but still another lefty option out of the bullpen potentially. Giolito, we've talked about sort of the ups and downs of their rotation throughout the second half of the season. He wasn't great with the Angels, but he was fine with the White Sox earlier this year. Could he be helpful? And then the Guardians just pick up all 3 guys.
All 3 of them.
And so it's like, oh well. I guess the Guardians have like a totally revamped roster despite not doing much at the trade deadline for their push to try to win the American League Central, and some teams just kind of get left with nothing.
Yeah, and the Cleveland motive is an interesting discussion. I mean, they're not a great team. They're not particularly in it right now. Did they do some of those moves just because 100% of their rotation is rookies or they're all injured? Maybe. Did they make some of those moves to block other teams? I don't know that that's necessarily something for them.
I think they just see weaknesses within Minnesota. I mean, that's a division where could 83 wins win the division? That's what we're looking at. It's the weakest division in baseball by a pretty decent margin, given how well the Brewers and the Cubs have been playing in the NL Central. So, yeah, if they feel like, okay, it's the race to get to 85 wins, how does this help us get to 85 wins? Then I guess so, but it just does feel a little bit flawed that one team can dominate the waiver market like that. It's funny, Dan Herron tweeted about that and said, like, why is like the fantasy version of this better, where like you get your guy and then you move to the back of the line?
Put a waiver priority on your claim. Like, if we get any of these guys, we want, let's just say Lucas Giolito was the most enticing player of the waiver claim period.
Yeah.
So then I would assume the first team on this list, which would probably be the Guardians, would take Giolito. But now they move to the bottom of the list, or we go in order, and now the Yankees are after them. They don't want anybody. They were dumping Harrison Bader. The Marlins are after that. They didn't claim some of the players that ended up going to the Reds right after them. So even if those 2 teams claim someone, the Diamondbacks are left with the 4th best option. I assume that they would have wanted somebody, whether it was
absolutely
one of those 2 relievers. Giolito probably wouldn't have fallen to them no matter what. He was really the only starter that made it. Although Mike Clevenger got posted, and he's actually been pretty decent lately, and I thought maybe he would get picked up.
The problem is next year he's still under contract, so you'd have to pay that or buy him out.
Right.
And he had like the baggage from before this season.
Sure.
You're biting a bigger. You're taking a bigger bite there.
Better pitcher right now than Giolito. Maybe not the upside, but yeah, the contract situation definitely muddies the water. Arizona just ends up with nothing, and I think that's a failed system.
Yeah, they put 4 claims. I mean, our John Gambadoro reported that Giolito, Lopez Moore, and Harrison Bader, who was an interesting option as sort of like who could be right-handed version of Alec Thomas as a platoon there. That's what Harrison Bader would be. He's crushed lefties this year. He's been pretty poor against righties, but he's a tremendous defensive center fielder. So, yeah, they tried to upgrade the roster, but now it's going to have to be from within. And we're recording this on September 1st, before they announce the call-ups. That's going to be the next opportunity to see where they can improve the most this roster from within their own organization.
So at some point today, we will find out who those call-ups are.
Correct.
My understanding is that rosters go from 26 to 28. Is that right? So is it as simple as 2 people will get called up today?
It should be, yeah. One pitcher, one hitter.
So who do you think stands the best chance to be called up? Obviously, the big one being Will Jordan Lawlar, the D-backs top prospect, who's only been in AAA for a couple of weeks, a handful of games. Are we going to see Lawlar get called up this afternoon?
That would be quick, but it's possible. It's certainly possible. And even if he's not called up this afternoon, I mean, they could call him up in the middle of September if they want to give him a couple more weeks. There's some flexibility with the postseason rosters. The rule is you have to be on the 40-man roster or on the 60-day IL by September 1st to be eligible.
Today.
But there are injury replacements. So if they put somebody who's on the 60-day IL on their postseason roster and they say we need a replacement for him, that gives them a little bit more flexibility. So there's a little bit of push and pull with this. So if they want to call up Lawlar today, they could do that. If they want to call him up in a week and a half, they could also do that. Look, with the infield as it is, they're getting very, very little offensive production from third base right now as it stands throughout this month. Jace Peterson throughout the season. You're correct. I mean, we had Josh Rojas and Emmanuel Rivera, and now it's Jace Peterson, Buddy Kennedy, and Evan Longoria. And there hasn't been a consistent presence there. Longoria's been the best offensive player of that group throughout the year, but since he's come back from the back issue, it's been a little bit of a struggle to get going offensively for him so far. Buddy Kennedy hasn't really gotten going. Jace Peterson had those 2 triples. Those were fun. But other than that, really nothing much at all. So Perdomo can play third base. So if they feel like their best chance and their best lineup going down the stretch is Lawlar at shortstop, Perdomo at third base, that is an option that they can go to. Other options as far as calling up hitters, if they want a right-handed power bat, they could always go back to Kyle Lewis. They could go back to Emmanuel Rivera if they want to get another guy in there who could play third base and maybe give them some more offensive upside. They could go back to Jake McCarthy if they want another outfield option. So they have other guys who have contributed to the major league team in the minor leagues who they could call on. But yeah, obviously the most intriguing is if they decide to call up their top prospect.
Give me 2 names. If you had to guess, who are the 2 getting called up today?
Jake McCarthy. Peter Strzelecki.
Strzelecki's one. Justin Martinez is down currently.
He is down.
That's a guy who's been up in
Tyler Gilbert if they want a lefty.
Could they bring Ryan Nelson back?
They could.
So they have options.
They could. They have Slade Ciccone slated to pitch on Saturday. So if they want somebody else who can give them length, I don't know if they want Nelson to be inserted back in a starting rotation and them to basically have the same rotation as they have had at certain times this year with Gallen, Kelly, Fott, Davies, and Nelson, or if they want to keep Ciccone there. They clearly wanted Giolito there, but now that's not an option. They have options if they want to go with somebody who can give them more length. If they want to go with a lefty, they can go with Gilbert. Strzelecki is, he pitched pretty well in his one opportunity, but he's only gotten one opportunity. So, yeah.
It's either going to be a very exciting afternoon with Lawlar news, or it's going to be kind of more of the same, like, oh, okay, Justin Martinez is back, or, oh, okay, Strzelecki's up, let's see what he's got. Yeah. It's going to be one of those kinds of days where it could be real highs, or it could be kind of the same as usual.
Yeah.
We'll see what they end up doing. For Alex Weiner, who covers the team at ArizonaSports.com, I'm Steve Zinsmeister. Thanks for checking out the Ain't No Fang podcast here at Arizona Sports.